I'm going to turn things over to Cliff Kirikoff, who is the director of this program and a RACC board member, to introduce our speaker. Cliff?
Thank you, Barbara. It's a pleasure to be able to introduce Katie Register this evening as part of our continuing monthly program, Conservation Today seminars. Katie teaches, she's located and teaches down at Longwood College, not that far from us. And she works extensively on preventing water pollution, focusing mostly on land-based solutions. And she's done extensive research on impact of things such as cigarette litter, convenience food packaging, helium-filled balloon litter, and abandoned boats. She's the executive director of the Clean Virginia Waterways, and is dedicated to improving our rivers and oceans through citizen stewardship. And I can mention that Katie and her team are going to help us in collecting data, or helping us with methodology to collect data in river cleanups, Maury or James River, etc. So we would have some data to base further advocacy on. She's consulted with the National Geographic Society, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the Ocean Conservancy, the Virginia Coastal Zone Management Program, as well as major corporations. In terms of science, she has her master's degree in biology from Miami University, and she has a master's degree from George Mason University in environmental science and public policy. She's a co-founder of the Virginia Plastic Pollution Prevention Network, and they have a website. And in the chat line, she's placed the website direction so that you can access that. And it's quite an interesting endeavor. I mean, it's statewide, and Katie's quite an expert on statewide, all the way from, say, Norfolk all the way up to Fairfax, and etc. So our program tonight will give us, I think, some inspiration. Katie definitely gives inspiration to our advocacy on plastics and waste reduction in general. So with that, I'll turn it over to Katie.
Great, thank you so much. Let me just share my PowerPoint here and get it loaded. So thank you for this opportunity. I'm really excited to talk to you about plastic pollution in Virginia. I'm going to focus mostly on solutions, but I am going to start by talking a little bit about the sources and the scope of the problem. Research shows that 60 to 80% of all the litter, the trash, the plastic that we're finding comes from inland sources. It comes from people who litter out of their cars, mismanagement of solid waste, as you see there with the trash cans overflowing. It comes from illegal dumping. That bottom picture is a homeless encampment by a river. And then, of course, people who intentionally litter balloons into the sky. So these are all land-based sources of debris. There are also water-based sources. This includes fishing gear that becomes lost or derelict. Also vessels, boats that are abandoned in the environment. And of course, floods and tsunamis can cause debris moving into our coastal waters. So we're concerned about plastic, and we focus on plastic because it does last so long. It's basically a permanent material that too often we use very, very temporarily. This little schematic shows just how long plastic lasts. You see disposable diapers and plastic bottles, 450 years, and that bottle of water might have lasted you, 5 or 10 minutes. So there's definitely growing awareness worldwide about plastic pollution. And a few years ago, I've been actually working on this for 26 years. And when I got started, nobody had heard of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which is actually like a soup of floating plastic. But we now know that there are 5 gyres, 5 patches of plastic in the oceans. And now awareness about this is very much higher. And that's a good thing because we're going to be getting more plastic. Basically, since about the end of World War II, plastics have come into our homes. And this chart here shows the projections of future growth of plastic waste. And I want to point out, this is projections of plastic waste. Most of this is single-use disposable items. What's not included in this chart are plastics that are used in things that last for a very long time, like plastic pieces of furniture that you would have in your home for 10, 20 years. So this is mostly the disposable plastic stuff. And we, of course, should recycle, but we cannot recycle our way out of this particular problem. We're going to need lots more, a lot more strategies. This is a list of the top 20 items that are recorded by volunteers during the International Coastal Cleanup. This is an annual cleanup. It's international, obviously. Here in Virginia, it's organized by my group, Clean Virginia Waterways. And these data show you that in yellow are all of our food and drink related items. You can see here that if we stopped littering, or if we stopped using so many disposable bottles and bags and cups and plates and straws, that most of the top 10 would just disappear. And this next slide that I have is the same 20 items, except this time what I put in yellow are items that are made out of plastic. Cigarette filters, those little white fibers, are cellulose acetate. They are a type of plastic. And you see most of this list is plastic. The items that are in orange, like balloons, rope, clothing, shoes, fishing line, are mostly plastic, but since some of them are not plastic, I didn't make them yellow. But you see that, plastic predominates our litter in Virginia as well as on our beaches. The impacts are well recorded. Unfortunately, there's so many instances of sea turtles and birds, mammals, sea mammals, and even terrestrial animals that are impacted by our debris. They also can be impacted by the chemicals that are either in the plastic or attached to the plastics when they've been in the water. Ingestion of our debris is also well documented. Here's a plastic bag that Kemp's Ridley turtle, the dead turtle at the bottom, very endangered, very rare sea turtle, and that one was found on Fisherman Island in Virginia with 2 balloons in its esophagus. So people are becoming more aware of these ingestion issues, as well as entanglement. A lot of animals become entangled in our debris. A study done 5 years ago revealed that these are the top 5 harmful types of ocean trash. It includes fishing gear, number 1, not a surprise. Fishing gear is made to catch animals, right? But you see that plastic bags, utensils, balloons, most of this is in our hands. It's those of us on land who are not disposing of our trash correctly. Lots of impacts, not just on animals, but on human health. Lots of studies are going on right now about what are the impacts of plastic once they get into the food chain and into our food and beer. The impacts also include habitat and economics. We spend a lot of money picking up debris, and there's also a cost to tourism. So that was just a recap of where it's coming from and some of the impacts. As far as solutions, I want to point out that there's many, many partners working on this throughout the world, and certainly in Virginia. State agencies, local agencies, nonprofits, schools, businesses. And I always think of the 3 approaches to decreasing litter in our environment, plastic pollution in our ocean, they come down to three major things. One is education, which is behavior change, educating people to make different decisions about what they choose to purchase and what they choose to do with their waste. Innovation, how can we make changes that will create debris or create waste that can be reused for other purposes. And then legislation, of course. So all of these need leadership and our engagement. One example of innovation that you might have heard a lot about recently is about changing from the linear economy where we are now into a circular economy. The difference is shown here. A linear economy, we make things, we use them, and then they go into the waste stream. In this case, the trash can. Recycling economy, we make things, we use them, and then we repurpose the materials once or twice, maybe 3 times, until eventually the waste goes into the waste stream. A circular economy, the waste from one person becomes the raw materials for something else. And there's very little waste at the end. There's lots of fabulous articles that show examples of some businesses that are working really hard on making this a reality. One of the strongest tools we have in Virginia is the Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan. And by marine debris, that's basically when we're talking about human-made trash and waste in the ocean, but it's also an issue, obviously, in our rivers and our creeks, in our parking lots, in our schools, our sidewalks. So basically, litter today inland becomes marine debris through storm sewers and through all the arteries of rivers that flow to the ocean. And that's one of the things we're trying to help people understand and connect, that what you do in Rockbridge does impact the ocean. What we do everywhere impacts the ocean. So this plan was published first published in 2014. And I want to thank the leadership of the Virginia Coastal Zone Management Program, which has determined that marine debris is a priority, and they're putting resources into providing leadership on this issue. Virginia was the first state on the East Coast to have a marine debris reduction plan, only the second state in the United States to have one. And now, as you see here, all kinds of states have created their own action plans. We're updating the Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan right now. It should be ready for public comment next month. And the 4 major categories we are focusing on: first, single-use plastics. A lot of us in the business call that SUP, S-U-P, single-use plastics. And those are mostly consumer items: bottles, caps, cigarette butts. The other 3 categories are fishing gear, that becomes derelict, microplastics and microfibers, and then abandoned and derelict vessels. If you want to be part of the public review of this document, there'll be an opportunity, and I'll share that with you in a second. So we've had, over the years, 3 summits that brought together researchers and educators and biologists and business people to look at the problems and come up with solutions. We've got another summit coming up. We also had this great workshop, social marketing. Social marketing is a process where you use the same techniques that the marketers use, but instead of trying to sell a car or sell a toothbrush or something like that, what we're trying to sell is a behavior change that will be good for the environment. So we had a workshop, actually 2, where we brought in partners so that we could build our capacity to do social marketing campaigns. They're much more effective than like writing a brochure and distributing a brochure that tells people what you want them to do. Social marketing means you listen to the people who are doing the behavior that you would like to see change. We did a social marketing campaign. We got a grant, and we worked for several years on reducing intentional balloon releases, people who buy hundreds of helium-filled balloons, attach plastic ribbons to them, take them outside and let them go. Because as you'll hear in a minute, they're showing up in the ocean. So here's a real quick pop quiz. Just answer it quietly in your brain. Based on our research, what is the #1 event during which people release balloons? Do you think it's store openings or sporting events? Do you think it's weddings, memorial events, or fundraising events? So pick your answer, and I'll tell you that the correct answer was D, memorial events. Our research shows that by far the #1 type event where people release balloons are either funerals or their anniversaries of somebody's death. And then second is awareness, which are like events to raise awareness about a cause. So here's another pop quiz for you. According to our research, what percentage of balloon releases are organized by women? What would you guess? Well, the correct answer is 83% of balloon releases are organized by women, organizing weddings and funerals and parties and things like that. So 2 of the tools that we created as part of this social marketing campaign, this one is called Joyful Sendoff. It was created by the Virginia Coastal Zone Management Program and Clean Virginia Waterways with many other partners. And we basically are talking to couples that are going to get married. And we found out that a lot of people release balloons during the send-off when the couple is leaving the wedding and they want a picture perfect goodbye ceremony with all the friends and family. So this website offers lots of picture perfect, litter-free options. This website, preventballoonlitter.org, it was started in Virginia by the same group that I just mentioned, but it's international now. We've got partners from all over the world. And this offers lots of inspirational ideas on ways to celebrate, ways to bring attention to your business, and ways to have memorial services that, again, does not require releasing balloons into the environment. We also created 2 videos that show the impacts and offer solutions or offer alternatives to balloon releases. I want to point out here too, when we brought in to focus groups people who actually plan balloon releases, and we asked them lots of questions. And one of the things that we thought, all of us being very focused on the environment, thought that sea turtles and birds and fish and deer would really resonate with people. But we were kind of surprised to find out that a lot of the folks we talked to were very concerned that balloons are a major cause of power outages when foil balloons, which are actually plastic covered with metallic inks, but when these metallic foil balloons come in contact with the power line, the power goes out. And that actually resonated very high with a lot of our people in our focus groups. So there's lots of other resources out there depending on what item you want to talk about. I'm sure many of you have become aware that single-use plastic straws, there's a lot of campaigns to work with restaurants and schools to decrease plastic straw use. Also in Virginia, we have a fishing line recycling program. This is mostly on the piers in the coastal area. There's a program working with high school students to get them away from bottled water use. And then Keep Virginia Beautiful has these mini grants. I think they're $500 to $1,000 for projects that have to do with litter prevention and litter cleanup. There's also a group called Virginia Green, and this group supports sustainable tourism by providing guidelines. So if you were going to have a festival, a music festival, you would want to talk to Virginia Green to make that festival as green and litter-free as possible. They have a conference coming up on April 28th and 29th, and they've extended a free registration to all members of your group. So I'll make sure that we get that information to Clifford and Barbara and get that out to you. It's I think it's 2 half days, and usually registration is, I think, $110. So it's a great opportunity, and plastic is on their agenda. There's also a Mid-Atlantic group that meets. I'm on it, as are several Virginians. We meet monthly to discuss regional solutions to marine debris and litter. There's also a calendar of events that's kept by Keep Virginia Beautiful. And there's all kinds of countywide collaborations of governments and NGOs and schools. NGOs, by that I mean non-government organizations. And also DEQ, the Department of Environmental Quality in Virginia, gives out annual grants to municipalities and counties that these grants are funded by the Virginia litter tax. And I'll talk about that in just a second. But here are 2 really, really great resources that I encourage you to check out. Litter Free Virginia, which is litterfreeva.org. During the legislative session in Virginia, they keep you up to date on bills that are going through the House of Delegates or the Senate. And they'll have talking papers, and it's a really good one-stop shop to find out how laws might impact us. The other group is the Virginia Plastic Pollution Prevention Network, which Clifford mentioned at the beginning of this. It's a free organization. We meet once a month. We have a monthly webinar during which we share new projects and resources. And we also have forums on the website where people can write and share. So much more going on. In formal schools, by formal, I mean K through 12, and informal, that like museums and aquariums and things like that. A lot of outreach and education is going on there about single-use plastics and plastic pollution. And the Virginia Aquarium is one of many aquarium in North America that are working to reduce single-use plastics, both in their buildings as well as getting pledges from their members to decrease single-use plastics. So earlier I mentioned in the International Coastal Cleanup, and you saw some data that was collected by our volunteers. And the data are so important to help us craft solutions that are based on data, based on facts. Here's 2 recent reports that we produced using data from our volunteers. One of them talks about littered bottles and cans, which in Virginia, we have way more littered bottles and cans than states that have bottle bills. And here's a little report that goes into detail about that. And then the other one is it summarizes our balloon research. So I'm a real fan of citizen gathered data. There's another program, Keep It Beachy Clean. This is in the coastal portion of Virginia, Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Sandbridge and such. We try to reach out to beach visitors wherever they eat or sleep or get on the beach trolley. Basically, it's a message, don't leave your trash on the beach. So check that out if you're interested in that. So I'm going to shift a little bit to talk. That was mostly about education, changing behavior, collecting data. But some people in Virginia are working to intercept plastic pollution. That moment that it goes from being litter on the street to aquatic, the moment that a rain event brings our trash into a storm drain. So Clean Virginia Waterways with many other partners have had 3 stormwater and litter workshops so far, one a year. We've got another one coming up this fall, and it's for stormwater engineers and managers who are by law required to keep plastic out of the stormwater. So it's an opportunity to share what's going on. And here's an example. This is a band-along trash trap, and it's in a stream, doesn't use electricity, but the plastic that manages to get into the stream will float down the stream and get captured in this trash trap. There's many different versions of trash traps, but this one was just put in last year in Fairfax. Another one's going in right now in Prince William County, Virginia. It's not cheap though. As you can see, this one cost more than $500,000 for the actual trap, plus all of the engineering, permitting, and the infrastructure that they had to put to make it ready. And also it's costing them, they assume, or they estimate $45,000 a year to make sure that it's constantly emptied of all debris. Here's a smaller version of something that traps trash once it's in the water. It's a sea bin. Sea bins are appropriate for like marinas and dock areas, and they do need electricity. They do pull water into the sea bin. They catch any debris, and then it can be emptied using that little mesh bucket. Lots of cleanups. I know you all do cleanups basically everywhere in Virginia. We've got some statewide events like the Great American Cleanup, which is in the spring, the International Coastal Cleanup, which traditionally is in the fall. However, we're more and more encouraging our volunteers to clean up and collect data year round, because quite honestly, litter is a year round problem. There's many regional cleanups like Clean the Bay Day, and the James River, Potomac River have events as well. And of course, lots of local. So unfortunately, we have to keep this up. It's not as effective as preventing it, but we've got to keep removing this debris. So earlier when I mentioned the International Coastal Cleanup, over the last 26 years, we've had more than 116,000 volunteers statewide, and they've picked up almost 5 million pounds over that period of time. And of course, the valuable data. So one other project that we've taken on in the last year is the issue of abandoned boats. It costs a lot of money to dispose correctly of a boat, especially fiberglass boats. And there's a growing problem where people abandon their boat in the environment rather than do the right thing and take it out and get it to the landfill. So we're working with the Navy, Coast Guard, tons of partners, because ADV, abandoned and derelict vessels, they're navigational hazards. If you're a boater, you don't want to run into one of these. They have hazardous materials, oil, gasoline, fire extinguishers, and such. And they also pose harm to the environment and to people and economics. I mean, if you are a marina owner and someone abandons a boat in your marina, you're now stuck with this high cost issue. So we're looking at commercial as well as recreational. And also it's a freshwater issue, the inland lakes. These pictures are from some of Virginia's lakes. So it's not just a coastal issue. And we've learned it's even an issue on land where people sometimes abandon boats they don't want, like behind stores or in public parking lots. And these boats are not abandoned, actually. These are inappropriately stored in public parking lots when they, because I guess the boat owners don't want to pay to have them stored in a commercial storage lot. There's a lot of research going on too about derelict fishing gear. This is a crab pot, which once the crab pots become severed from their floats, they cannot be retrieved anymore, but they continue to catch animals. Lots of research is going on that. And clam netting. So Virginia is one of the top producers of aquaculture clams. These baby clams are put in shallow coastal waters covered with netting to protect them from predators. But when the netting gets through a storm, ice storms are particularly bad, these nets end up on the barrier islands of Virginia, and they are huge. Here's two of our volunteers showing just how big some of these nets can be. We've also been doing, and by we, I mean all of our partners, not just Clean Virginia Waterways, But we've worked a lot with the Virginia Aquarium. They, for 4 years and 4 months, had trained researchers and trained volunteers monitor these 4 sites in Virginia monthly for 4 years and 4 months. So here's another pop quiz. According to this 4+ years of monthly surveys, what percentage of debris on Virginia beaches is made out of plastic? What would you guess? Well, the answer is 83% of all the debris we found in these 4 years was made out of plastic. We've also done extensive monitoring of balloon litter. It turns out, and we learned this because of the volunteer data, it turns out that the islands off of Virginia are a hot spot for the accumulation of balloon litter. We're talking about latex balloons, foil balloons, and all the plastic attachments, including, you see there, a laminated note, plastic laminated note. And in fact, we found that on these barrier islands, when you add up the balloons and the balloon ribbons, they actually are the #1 type of debris we're finding on these beaches. So it's definitely an issue that we want to continue to fight. In fact, just on Easter Sunday, 7 of us went out to Fisherman Island, and we found more than 200 pieces of balloon related litter in less, or it was half a mile that we monitored. So it's a hot spot. So microplastics, a growing issue. The Virginia Institute of Marine Sciences has done some really great research on microplastics, quantifying them, understanding their impact. I encourage you to Google VIMS, Virginia Institute of Marine Sciences, and microplastics, and learn more about their studies. So I'm going to finish up talking a little bit about some laws that hopefully will make a big change in Virginia. First, the litter tax. So since the 1970s, Virginia has had a small tax. Basically, Walmarts and 7-Elevens and grocery stores have paid between $10 and $15 a year. And the tax was not raised for 44 years until last year. So businesses that were paying $10 a year towards this fee, or this tax, are now paying $15. There's a related tax that used to be $15 and now it's $30. But that's a law that just passed last year to raise that. Also, intentional balloon releases. It was passed to ban those purposeful or on purpose balloon releases. And as of July 1st, it will be against the law to do a balloon release in Virginia. And Maryland just passed this law, I think last week. So plastic bags. Just last year also, local municipalities were given the ability to put a 5-cent fee on single-use plastic bags. Until this law passed, no local government could do that. They had to wait till Richmond basically said, yes, you have permission. No local government has passed this yet because there's a lot of barriers. First, no municipality wants to go first. If there's going to be unintended or unanticipated issues, they want somebody else to go first. Some policymakers doubt that plastic bags are a problem, so that's a barrier to them taking action. And then you see the other ones. There's lots of questions local governments have. They're hoping for model legislation, which is not forthcoming. And they're concerned, will there be some pushback from businesses or consumers? And then COVID certainly did not help. So a number of small and larger statewide groups are trying to ask the question, how can we help overcome these barriers? And what resources can we provide? In Virginia Beach, some nonprofits are coming up with a template that other communities can use to help educate their policymakers. So once that template's available, we'll definitely get the word out, and it could be modified for every local area. One of the things that we're hoping will help convince policymakers is based again on the data from our volunteers. You see here, this is a map graph that shows most of the trash that we pick up is plastic. And what I've circled there shows what percentage of our trash that we got in 2019 was made up of plastic grocery bags. This is a different way to look at the data. This is the number of plastic bags that we have collected over 25 years. And you see there is an upward trend there. Other laws, expanded polystyrene. Most people call this, I'm blanking here, styrofoam. So food service containers made of styrofoam will be phased out in Virginia. And also another law passed to start a plastic waste prevention advisory council, which is not yet up and running, but hopefully will be soon. Something really exciting that happened about 3 weeks ago, the governor signed Executive Order 77, which will require all executive branch state agencies, that's all of the state agencies that report to the governor, as well as all state universities, to within 120 days, stop distributing, stop buying, stop giving away plastic bags, polystyrene food service, straws, plastic cutlery, and single-use water bottles. So I know in where you guys are from, you've got VMI, and they will be spending their summer figuring this out, as other universities are. In addition to laws, though, policies are a powerful way to decrease debris. We've seen in the last couple of years, all the state parks have added, they already had a no litter policy in state parks, but they explicitly added balloons and sky lanterns. Those are the lanterns that you put a candle in and they go up in the air, and we call that flaming litter. It's litter on fire. But a number of universities also have banned balloon releases and glitter. Glitter is small pieces of plastic. So policies can make a big difference. And then I'm going to finish with a few images of public art that engage people. In Suffolk, they came up with this big butt program. These are big cigarette butts that they made a video that shows anyone how you make them yourself, and they're really eye-catching to let people know that cigarette butts are litter too. And there's the YouTube channel. I can share that with you later if you want to check that out. And this is a balloon, or I'm sorry, this is a sea turtle sculpture. And all of those pieces of things you see are balloons and ribbons. This turtle is huge. I mean, it's probably 7 feet from head to tail. Right now it's on display with the National Geographic exhibit. And I was near that exhibit a few weeks ago as a speaker, and people would turn the corner and they'd see this big turtle, and next to it was a big butterfly that was also made out of balloon litter. And the first reaction was, oh my gosh, how beautiful. And then when they realized that this was all made from the balloons and the ribbons that we found in our research, it is powerful. And then Barbara was reminded me of your Flippy the whale. And I found this picture online of that. So this is another way, engage people. And I just want to tell it this wonderful little story. This didn't happen to me. I wish it had. But a teacher was telling their students how all water on our planet is connected, from the little tiny streams in the mountain all the way to the biggest ocean. All water is connected. And he was with his little students out at a stream. And one of the little boys leaned over and started singing right near the surface of the water. And the teacher said, "What are you doing?" And the little boy said, "I'm singing to the whales." And I just love that story because that little boy got it. That little boy understood that little stream that he was standing in was connected to the whales and was connected to the ocean. So I'm glad that you chose a whale. So just to wrap up, stay engaged. Please join the Virginia Plastic Pollution Prevention Network. We are going to be opening up membership. We had to restrict it, but we've had a lot of requests. So we are happy to have you all join it. And we have a summit coming up. This will be free. It's going to be every afternoon, July 20, 21, 22. And we're going to be covering in more detail everything that I've talked about. Also in May of 2022, we're going to have a marine debris summit, hopefully in person. So we'll let you know about that. And Clean Virginia Waterways is also going to be hosting a marine debris research summit for college students next year. So I think I'm going to stop with this quote, my favorite quote: "How inappropriate to call this planet Earth when clearly it is ocean." So I thank you for your time today. I'm happy to answer any questions, and thank you for taking care of our blue planet. So I guess, Barbara, you're going to let me know if there's any questions.
Oh, that was great, Katie. Thank you so much. Please, if you have any questions or comments or information that you want to share, please type that into the chat and I'll read it back to Katie. And if there are things that that she or anybody else on the call it does not have a ready answer for, we'll be glad to follow up with you later. Let me start first with a comment. Gretchen says that she loves the story about the little boy singing to the whales, and we'll be sharing that. So I think that a lot of these, I think we're learning a lot and being inspired a lot here, and that will be ripples in the pond that continue out from little Rockbridge here.
Right.
The next is a question. Let me see. Whoops, it just moved on me. Let me get it back. The question is from Art: is there a rough estimate of where the amount of plastic in the ocean gyres comes from? Developed versus undeveloped nations? Any suggested references on this topic?
Yes, there was a study done probably 3 years ago by Jenna Jambeck, Jambeck. She and her colleagues took a hard look at that question, and they determined that countries, basically, I'm really summarizing this, but countries with less developed infrastructure for solid waste management were more likely to be the source of plastic debris. And so a lot of countries in Asia were on that list. And but we always say caution, because when that report came out, some people said, "Oh, so this isn't a problem in the United States." No, it's a problem in the United States. But yeah, and I can send you, Barbara, that reference so that Art can look that up. But if you look at Jambeck, Jambeck, she's with the University of Georgia and a prolific researcher on sources of debris.
Interesting. And I know sometimes developed countries' debris becomes debris from undeveloped countries if they're just shipping it off. So, okay. Next question. Julie asks, once plastic debris makes it to a landfill, how safe is it? Does it stay in place, or does it get carried out in the wind, or distributed in some other way?
Yeah, well, landfills in Virginia do have, if you go to them, you'll see that there's lots of fencing around them, because of course plastic bags blow in the wind and other light debris will blow in the wind. But getting our plastic debris to the landfill is right now the best alternative. So they do take steps to keep it from blowing out, that's for sure.
And then do you have any comments on some of these, I don't know if they're new, but some of them seem to be newer, disposal methods for plastics that claim to destroy them or turn them into energy or anything, along those lines?
Yeah, okay, so there's a couple of different plastic to energy schemes that are out there. And some, like in Hawaii, there's a big program that they bring in these huge, huge nets that weigh thousands of pounds that are all made out of plastic, and they are burned for energy for the grid. It ultimately is not the solution. I mean, I think ultimately the solution is we've got to be much smarter about how much plastic we're producing. And in fact, there's some people who call plastic smart plastic and stupid plastic. Stupid is a single-use plastic bottle. Smart is maybe something that you'll run into in a hospital where you want a high degree of sanitation. But there is right now concern amongst many of us about a process that's sometimes called chemical recycling or advanced recycling, where plastics are heated to like 700 some degrees Fahrenheit, which renders, they're not burned, but they're heated. And then the plastic will be reduced to different constituent chemicals, which can be reused. I have tried to learn more about the energy budget on that, like how can you heat something to 700 some degrees and have the constituent that comes out of it be of the same value or greater value. So there's actually a very robust conversation about we need way more information before these start to be built in Virginia. And one is actually planned for Cumberland County, Virginia. So we need to learn a lot more. And for the most part, the environmental community is not supportive of advanced recycling with the information that they have right now.
I see. Okay, next question. Marty asks, where is a good source for how to use psychology in environmental promotions such as posters?
I'm sorry, you broke up. I didn't get all that
Oh,
question.
sorry, I'll read it again. Where is a good source for how to use psychology in environmental promotions such as posters?
Using bicology? I'm still not getting that.
Psychology.
Psychology, thank you. I never got that word, psychology. Okay. I would go back to community-based social marketing. If you Google community-based social marketing, you'll see a lot of resources because it is based on psychology. It is based on understanding what motivates people. And there's a website that's run by Dr. Doug McKenzie Moore, and he has lots of examples of case studies of different groups that have used community-based social marketing. The key is you listen to your target audience so that when you get your flyer or your poster or your educational material, the message will reach your target audience. So I think I would start there because it is based on social science and psychology. So I would recommend starting there.
Okay. And there's a comment here from one of the attendees on the call. The CEO of Bluer Futures says that their organization is a good example of a group that does social marketing. Perhaps you could type your contact information into the chat, and that way when this is published, everybody will have that.
Absolutely. And the advanced recycling, we have knowledge on that as well that we can send you or that we can talk about whenever you're ready. Also, for the psychology of it, we have on our board of directors a certified specialist for psychiatry that actually has been a practicing psychiatrist and has a practice in North Carolina for quite a few years. She's my stepmother. So our network is incredible and I have a ton of information for you and I cannot wait. I'm jumping out of my shoes just to bend your ear. So
okay, well,
you let me know when the time is.
Contact information, if you would, into the chat, and that way everybody will have it and your phone will probably be ringing off the hook.
I've had 20,000 notifications in the past 2 days. I'm not giving up on anybody. I'm answering the phone nonstop unless I'm in a meeting like this with incredible minds like you guys.
Oh, that's very nice. Now, Melody asks a question. She says, do you have a good non-plastic reusable bag lead. We have $2,000 in our budget to buy reusable bags to give free during our Choose to Refuse Single-Use Plastics Month of July. What would you recommend?
Okay, well, I'm going to make a pitch for a company that I really like to work with, Eco Maniac. It's ECO space Maniac company. They're in Virginia Beach. And all they do is they sell promotional items if you wanted it, you know, with your name on it or a logo or something like that. But the reason I support Ecomaniac is the woman who runs it is also a marine debris researcher. And she used to be with the Virginia Aquarium stranding team. So she saw firsthand the impact of what we're talking about. So whenever Clean Virginia Waterways has something to purchase along those lines, we always go with Ecomaniac in Virginia Beach.
Great. Lena comments and asks a question saying that Kroger's said the company would phase out plastic bags, but so far that has not happened, perhaps because of COVID. Is there any news on that and any thought about how to make that happen?
I don't have any specifics on Kroger. I do know that the two Wegmans grocery stores in Richmond said no to plastic bags a couple of years ago. I think it's maybe 2.5 years ago, and they have no intention of going back. But no, I don't have an update on the Kroger situation.
Gretchen also comments about Virginia just passing a bill that approved chemical conversion in Virginia. Could you maybe say a little bit more about that? Did it approve blanket statewide allowing these things, or was it a specific project? And wasn't there a study also mandated?
Right. So it didn't approve or disapprove. It basically said that advanced recycling would not be under the same regulations that solid waste management facilities have to adhere to. Basically, it said that advanced recycling facilities, if and when they're built, would be treated as a manufacturing business, and again, not subject to local or state regulations like a landfill is regulated. And that was why a lot of us in the environmental field did not support that bill, because we thought, hey, it should be regulated as long as they're taking in waste. So yeah, that's what that bill was about. And yes, the study was also, I'm not sure if that was a law that passed, but at any rate, yes, the state is supposed to be doing a study.
Okay, I see. Here's a sort of complicated question. You showed some timelines in your slides for how long various plastics last in the environment. Could you speak a little to what that means? Like at the end of that timeline, what are we looking at? Are we looking at just itty bitty microplastics that have dispersed, like a degradation, or are we actually looking at a decomposition into other components?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And I once posed that question to a chemist, because I'm not a chemist. My background is aquatic ecology. But first, we're talking about large macroplastics becoming microplastics. So it's still plastic. And then down to the nano, even the smaller size. But with enough eons, with enough centuries, plastics apparently will, I'm not sure if I'm going to get exactly the right word here, because again, I'm not a chemist, but with enough centuries, the plastics will degrade to the point where I guess they're in the chemical status. So obviously you can't quote me on that because I don't have the right words. But it was my understanding that if you wait several hundred years, you're not going to see these as plastic anymore.
Okay.
So sorry, I can't be more specific.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. If I can share, I had an office mate at EPA who was the nuclear physicist for the agency, and he used to tease me mercilessly that at least his waste had a half-life, and mine, all the chemical and plastic and everything, didn't. It was going to be here forever.
You know what? To do justice to that question, I will find the answer from that comment.
That would be terrific.
I'll share it with you because he did explain it much better than I just did.
Here's one about the traps that you showed, only translated to a home situation. Are there any traps made that you can add to your washing machine to prevent those microfibers from your polyester clothes or whatever from draining into the sewage treatment plant and then the rivers and then the bay and oceans and wherever it goes?
Yeah. Well, whomever asked that question knows that that is a major source of microfibers are the polyesters that we wear. Yes, there is a ball that you can put into your washing machine that captures, not all, but captures a lot of those fibers. And then every once in a while you have to pick them off the ball. It's called Cora ball, C-O-R-A, I believe, Cora ball. And then there are some inline filters that can be put for the wastewater that's leaving your washing machine. And actually there's some groups that are trying to get those disseminated widely.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I'm going to look for one of those. It's just about 8 now, but we did start a minute or two late. If anybody has to go, please feel free to sign off. But Katie, if you're willing to take just a couple of more questions, we have a few more. And if anybody else has any last minute ones, type them into the chat. Katie, how are you on time?
Yeah, I can do a few more, no problem.
Okay. Here's a question about tracking trash. Has anybody looked at the time of travel for trash? Let's say if somebody chucks something out here in Rockbridge County, typically, I guess it would matter how close to a stream it was or how close to a stormwater inlet. But, what's the journey like and what's sort of the time scale for stuff that we have as trash here to end up in some poor sea creature?
Right. So I know of a couple of studies, but the ones I know of did not start as far inland as we're talking about. But there was one study done by some college students in Europe where they threw into a river biodegradable wooden discs that were engraved with messages saying, if you find this, send an email to, and then it was their address. And I thought it was great that they used biodegradable wood. And then people would find them and they would be able to record the time and the distance that it went. So there was that study in Europe. There's also been some studies once debris gets in the ocean, like during that huge tsunami in Japan a few years ago, which released huge amounts of plastic. There were some items that were tracked. So they were able to figure out how long did it take to get from Japan to Alaska or to San Francisco. And some of the studies there, some of the trash went way faster than the predictions were. So yeah, but I don't know of any that are like inland rivers to the ocean. There might be there. I just don't know of them.
Okay. And here's another from our area question. There are a lot of uses of plastic in agriculture and also impacts on agriculture of plastic waste. I know I've heard farmers complain about windblown bags gumming up their tractors and combines or whatever, equipment out there, and that it can create some very expensive repairs. But in terms of the use of plastics, of course, we have those nets that go around hay bales, the round bales, and sometimes big, long plastic sheets and things like that. Are there any statistics or data on trash that is uniquely from agriculture?
Well, I know there is concern about all of the plastic netting that you're talking about on hay bales. The biggest connection I can think of to agriculture along this lines is what you already brought up, the plastic bags, and how it not only gums up their mechanical instruments, but one of the biggest fans of a bag ban, a plastic bag ban in the state of Virginia, or a bag fee, are actually the cotton farmers down in Suffolk and the southeast part of Virginia, because if a plastic bag gets baled up along with all the cotton during the harvest time, it can ruin the entire bale of cotton, because the plastic ends up getting woven into fabric, and then it won't take a dye. And so the farmers can have an entire bale of cotton turned away by the buyers if they see plastic in it. So for many years, they've been a fan of stopping, plastic bags in Virginia. So I really can't answer beyond that.
Well, that's interesting. Well, I will just also remark, that's the last of the questions I have here, but I'll also remark that several people put their answers to your quizzes in the chat, and we have some pretty high scoring attendees here, I must say. They did better than I did.
Well, great. I'm glad to hear you all did well on that.
Well, thank you so much. And I'd like to turn it over to Cliff to close us out here and to mention our next presentation, which will be in May. Cliff?
Well, thank you, Barbara. Thank you so much, Katie, for joining us this evening and giving us some amazing stories and inspiration as well. And we'll redouble our efforts here, and we look forward in the future to coordinating with you guys and on various projects, and tap your knowledge, particularly on the water pollution side of things. Our series is a monthly series. It's called Conservation Today. Our next event is going to be on May 12th, and it will be on the topic of clean energy. And Narissa Turner from the Virginia Conservation Network, who is an expert on that subject and also is very much involved in the legislative advocacy down in Richmond on that topic. So she's going to give us a very interesting perspective on a statewide and also legislative side on clean energy issues. Over the summer, we'll take a break. So June, July, and August, we'll take a pause, and we'll start up in the fall in September, second Wednesday, same, probably Zoom again until COVID dissipates more. And it would be from, again, 7 to 8 o'clock. And our speaker in September will be giving us an overview of the Chesapeake Bay situation and how various parts of Virginia, like ourselves with the James River and all of that, fit into the Chesapeake Bay conservation issues. So again, thank you all for attending, and gee, thank you so much, Katie, for that inspirational talk. And we look forward to seeing everyone next month.
Thank
May
you so
12th.
much.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, everyone, for coming.